If you are a kind person, I advise you to remember this phrase. Good people get good rewards, but old good people do not. Today, I'm sharing with you the lesson of learning to say no. Don't be an old good person. In the records of the Imperial Library of the Western Han Dynasty, there's a story like this. One year, Duke Mu of Qin lost a horse. More than 300 farmers at Xishan caught this horse and divided it up to eat. Later, when officials investigated, they discovered they had eaten the emperor's beloved horse. The decision was made to execute them all. But Duke Mu of Qin said that moral people would not harm others for livestock. I heard that eating horse meat is not worthy of wine. It's bad for health. So Duke Mu of Qin arranged for his men to give these farmers a lot of wine. Several years later, war broke out between the states of Qin and Jin. Duke Mu of Qin was trapped in a desperate situation, his life hanging by a thread. Suddenly, a large group of wild men rushed over, bravely fighting, risking their lives, and rescued Duke Mu of Qin. These wild men were the farmers who ate Duke Mu of Qin's horse at the foot of Xishan, repaying the kindness of sparing their lives back then. As the saying goes, good deeds bring good rewards, and evil deeds bring retribution. Many times, I believe in karma. I believe good people will be rewarded. But I believe even more that old good people, excluding those who are overly good, often do not end well, whether in life or work. Many people are just bad, taking advantage of others. A few days ago, while having dinner with some friends, a buddy complained about a colleague at his company, who repeatedly asked him for money, but never paid it back. He would say he'd pay back when he had money, but 6 months had passed, and not a penny was returned. I said, your colleague's character probably isn't that great. At least he has issues with integrity. But you also have a problem yourself. If you knew he was like this, why keep lending him money again and again? My friend's explanation made a lot of sense to me, because many people think this way. He said they're just colleagues, seeing each other every day. How can you refuse when asked for a loan? People like this are what we usually call old good people. Very easygoing. Don't know how to refuse others, even if it means they're wrong themselves. Regarding this, what I want to say is, there are really some bad people in this world. The kinder and more easygoing you are, the more they'll take advantage of you, cheat you. And this is why I say old good people often don't end well. Because these people won't understand or appreciate your respect and kindness. They'll only become more and more unreasonable and demanding from you, and more self-righteous. What's even more disgusting is, if one day you refuse them, even just once, you'll anger them. All your previous efforts will be forgotten. There are too many people like this. You lend him money 10 times. He says you're really great, but just refuse once, and he'll declare to the whole world that you're not considerate enough, forgetting all 10 times you helped him. Last year, a friend of Achen's asked him for an emergency loan of 5,000 yuan. Originally, it was agreed to be paid back in 3 months. But it's been a year now, and the other party never mentioned it again. This made Achen a bit anxious. Although 5,000 yuan isn't much, it's still a month's salary for him. It's just gone without a trace. Obviously, Achen felt wronged. So, some time ago, after a lot of mental preparation, Achen finally mustered up the courage to ask his friend about it. The result was, the friend admitted it. Achen saw his friend smack his head and say, "Oh man, brother, I'm really sorry. I meant to pay you back long ago. But the new iPhone is coming out soon, and I've been saving up to buy it. Can you lend me another 5,000 yuan? So I can have enough money? We'll pay you back together then. At that moment, Achin felt 100,000 grievances. But he didn't feel right about refusing. As a result, he actually lent the money again. It's all about being friends. It's not easy for him either. Can't let money ruin the relationship. Achin honestly said. A few days ago, Achin's new shop was getting ready to open. And he urgently needed money. He had no choice. So he asked his friend for money. The result was, instead of not asking at all. After asking, the friend was upset and said, "Just because I owe you a little money, do you have to nag me every day? You're not considerate enough, Achin. Consider me blind." After saying that, he turned and left. I feel quite self-reproachful, feeling like I've made it difficult for my friend. Achin said old good people always like to shoulder the responsibility themselves, blaming themselves. There's a saying, don't pass on kindness. But don't forget mistakes. Not remembering leads to deep resentment. It means being kind is okay. But don't be an old good person. Occasionally helping others is fine. But if you do it often, when you stop, it may end up causing resentment. The most tragic thing in this world isn't being an old good person. It's being an old good person and still offending people. Don't be too good. Just pass the test. Otherwise, you'll be taken advantage of as an old good person. The old saying goes, suffering is a blessing. But it's really not like that. Suffering is just suffering. Someone who doesn't know how to refuse is always taken advantage of and bullied, is often bitterly complaining. 2. Learn to refuse. It's a compulsory lesson for adults. A survey once found that learning to refuse reasonably can reduce over 90% of unnecessary trouble and save a lot of personal time and energy. Actually, learning to refuse is a rare ability. Have you ever had this experience? Sometimes, just to fit in, you have to attend meaningless dinners, drink reluctantly, and say insincere words. Even when someone is wrong, you don't need to agree. When the circle doesn't fit, you don't have to force yourself in. Sometimes, when you know what you truly want to do, the life you truly enjoy, you won't waste time on unimportant people and matters. There's a host who's interviewed guests from all walks of life, but he has very few friends. Besides the show, he can stay at home for 2 weeks without going out, not seeing anyone. He once mentioned that friendship is about more than just being acquaintances. There's a certain taste to it, which is crucial. This taste can be understood as shared interests, compatibility, and manners. Sometimes, if your values don't align, no matter how much you toast and chat, it's like being strangers, or even talking past each other. Many times, we're often afraid to refuse. Refuse circles we don't want to join or people we don't want to know. And refuse social events we don't want to attend. They're not really our kind of people. No matter how hard you try to please, or how you make do, it doesn't have much value or meaning. Just like a saying goes, I no longer pretend to have many friends, but return to solitude. Starting a solitary life as the real me. A writer once wrote about moving 5 times in a city, but each time unexpected guests would come, and he'd be disturbed frequently. Each time, because he couldn't stand the knocking, he'd open the door, and almost anyone would come in, all making things difficult for him. These people either wanted him to write banners for their leaders, or invited him to some gathering, or sometimes they just came to kill time. And this group of people also delayed his work, making it impossible for him to write. In fact, life doesn't lack those who always consume you. If you can't learn to refuse, you'll eventually bring countless troubles and distress upon yourself. Actually, when you express your attitude and principles, others will find it hard to take advantage of you recklessly. Someone once said, "Why do others increasingly not take you seriously? Because you're too easy to talk to. Always saying yes whenever asked. Always giving whenever requested. In this world, there are too many people you really don't need to care about. When they treat you with an attitude of consumption, they're disrespecting you. If you keep accommodating them, they'll only take advantage of you shamelessly, and you'll end up completely exhausted, or even drained." Perhaps many people, when faced with others' requests for help, are embarrassed to refuse, because they're used to being overly kind, thinking that if they don't go all out to help, it'll not only harm their relationship, but also their own face, even for help within their capacity. Of course, give it your all. But if it exceeds your ability and limits, ultimately, you'll only drag yourself down and suffer. After becoming adults, we all need to learn to refuse, to help those who originally don't belong to us, but push all the pressure and responsibility onto ourselves. Most of the time, we're afraid or don't know how to refuse others for various reasons. As the saying goes, if your reasons are legitimate, don't be afraid to refuse others. When someone makes a request, they've already prepared two possible answers in their heart. So any answer you give them is within their expectations. Refusing someone more or less affects the relationship. Refusing a circle more or less means losing some friends. Refusing some help more or less invites criticism and complaints. But when you know what you truly want, what you should cherish and care about, and know how to give to those who deserve it, then you can make decisive decisions and choices. In the days ahead, be a kind-hearted person. But please don't be an old good person who doesn't know how to refuse. Kindness with boundaries and principles is true kindness. Otherwise, it's weakness. It's foolishness. That's all for today's sharing. Thank you very much for watching. If you like the Buddha Zen channel, don't forget to subscribe and share. You'll never be alone.